What's up? This is Miss Doyle, and we're going to be doing notes over the Civil War and Reconstruction. So we've already talked about the Civil War between the North and the South. The Union is the North, the Confederacy is the South, and we have President Abraham Lincoln as the Union president, and we have President Jefferson Davis as the Confederate States of America president. So we've given you some backstory, we've done some research. So what we're going to do is we're going to fine tune it, and we're going to move to the end of the Civil War, which is going to be known as the Reconstruction era. So what we're doing here is I am going to be going through this interactive PowerPoint. So that means the directions for this are you are going to click and drag the terms to fill in the blank and sort into the correct categories. Now let me show you an example of what that means before we start. So I'm going to be going over the answers to the fill in the blanks, and as I'm talking, you are going to click and drag terms. So, for example, the North had an industrial economy. I'm going to click and drag that red term right there, and I'm going to do that for the rest of the remaining terms that have blanks, so on and so forth. So there may be times where you just might have to type in, and I'm going to let you know when that happens. So again, we're going to be using the Google slide deck to guide you through the beginning of the Civil War up until the end of Reconstruction. So let's go. I am going to go to present mode so you do understand, and I will use my arrow to kind of help guide you in what you're supposed to do. But before we begin, you are going to get some backstory on the American Civil War. Okay, it's only 3 minutes long. So you're going to click this clip right here. It's going to take you to the YouTube educational clip. Going to watch it, and then once you're done watching it, or you can do it while you're watching it, use the educational clip above to summarize the Civil War in 5 sentences. So this is the time period of the video that you're going to pause. In about 5 seconds, I'm going to continue. 5, 4, 1. So you unpause the video at this time, and we are going to get going. So let's talk about what the North looks like versus what the South looks like. Of course, all my little wonderful things have got to load. So in the North, the northern states were called the Union. So what you would do is you double click the Union and you bring it up here. And you're going to do that as I am talking. Okay. Lincoln was their president. The North had an industrial economy. They believed in having a strong central government. In the South, the southern states were called the Confederates, or the Confederacy, or the Confederates of the United States. Obviously, there's only Confederacy down here, so make sure you click and drag that up to the correct box. They need slaves to work on their plantations. So slaves were considered a piece of property that they could use to do manual labor for them, such as cotton, tobacco, and any other thing you can find on a plantation. The South had an agricultural economy. So you would grab the agricultural, obviously I'm in present mode, so it's not going to go over, and you click and drag it to there. And Jefferson Davis was their president. In 1863, this was an order by the U.S. president to free slaves in 10 states. Notice how it's not all states. It's only in the states that are warring with the Union. It applied to slaves, I already said it, in states that rebel, robbing Confederates of laborers, okay? That is the Emancipation Proclamation. So you're going to type your answer right here in the document. Okay. And what you need to understand is the 13th Amendment doesn't come until the end of the Civil War, and that's abolishing slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation only abolished slavery in the South. Make sure you understand the difference. So I want you to, in just a second, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to think what does it mean to reconstruct something? So if you're having to reconstruct something back together, I want you to give your own term before we keep going and talking about what reconstruction means. So pause the video, fill this out, only has to be a sentence long. And here we go. So let's talk about the Reconstruction era, okay? For the next 4 slides, you will be reading an article about radical reconstruction. Please answer the questions in the space provided, okay? So what you're going to do is if the text looks small, you have a little zoom button in the top left screen. I'll show you at the end of the video what that looks like, or you can just see the little magnifying glass, and you can zoom it in if you need to zoom it in. So you are going to be reading, okay, this entire section, and you will follow the prompts or what I'm telling you right here in the directions. For example, drag the circles to the correct Reconstruction Amendment. So you put that over A, B, C, or D. Here, you're going to type in the box to describe what the 14th Amendment is. So you'll double click and type your answers there. You cannot do this on present mode. Please make sure you don't do that. Double click here, answer there, same here. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to summarize the Reconstruction Act in just 2 sentences. So you can add, you can, continue down. I'll scroll down on your page. You don't have to, have to put it on 2 different pages. Okay. Just make sure you put it on the page before. You do the same thing here, describe the 15th Amendment, so on and so forth, until you get to the end of the document. Okay, so at this time, you're going to pause the video, you're going to read the next 4 pages and follow the prompts and make sure you answer correctly. So pause. All right, welcome back. So we are now officially done with the Civil War. The Union has won, and now we have to figure out how we're going to unite both the North and the South back together. And you got to understand that's Lincoln's number one plan. Okay. And because that's Lincoln's number one plan, he's going to be very lenient. So we're going to talk about the 3 different potential plans that were created for readmitting former Confederate states in the Union. So Lincoln's plan, okay, very lenient policy to readmit former Confederate states. The aspects of his plan. So the government pardons former Confederates that swear allegiance to the Union, except high-ranking officials and crimes against POWs. Okay, and what the 10% plan is when 10% of those who voted in 1860 for a state swore allegiance, then they could be readmitted. Readmittance would be occurred for that state. So that means that of every 100 people, only 10 had to say, "I promise I won't do it again." Do you really think that's enough? Don't you think the other 90 could kind of overthrow the 10? But Lincoln's just trying to reunite everybody. They're trying to make sure that we do not lose those states, so on and so forth. So as soon as they got readmitted, the state could then form a government. And those who got readmitted at the time were Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, and Virginia. They used this method. However, something happens to Abraham Lincoln, and I'm pretty sure we all know what that is. He gets assassinated. So when the president gets assassinated, who becomes the president? The vice president. So now Andrew Johnson is going to be Lincoln's vice president, who now becomes president. It is more harsh than Lincoln's and wanted to punish Southern leaners and plantation owners for breaking a part of the Union. So this was implemented while Congress was out of session. So that means President Johnson went behind Congress's back. And anytime you go behind somebody's back, can you really trust them, or do you really want to go with their idea? Absolutely not. But so this is the aspects of Johnson's plan. Pardons only given to those who took a loyalty oath. So it targeted planter aristocrats, so, those plantation owners, those wealthy people. So they could not have any pardons if you were one of the planter aristocrats or a Confederate official or those who owned property over $20,000. It's a lot right now to us, but it's especially a lot back then. A state needed to abolish slavery before being readmitted. A state had to repeal secession ordinances before being readmitted. No rights or protections for newly freed slaves were allowed, and the rest of the former Confederate states, except Texas, were readmitted under this plan. But like I said, Johnson went behind Congress's back. Now, Congress's plan is going to be known as the Radical Republican Plan. So Congress is the Senate and the House of Representatives. Those are the people who are making legislation, meaning they're making the laws to determine how we're going to unite as a union. So Republicans are going to return to Congress in 1866 after break and are unhappy because of Johnson has started the Reconstruction effort without any of their input. After Johnson vetoes both a civil rights bill and an extension of the Freedmen's Bureau, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, Congress takes action. Okay, they attempt to punish the former members of the Confederacy and develop the harshest plan. It calls for military occupation of the South and refuses to recognize any state admitted under Lincoln or Johnson's plan except Tennessee. Okay, so the radical Republicans are sitting here thinking, we're just going to let them come back? I mean, this was a brother versus brother, cousin versus cousin battle. Innocent people were killed because they were too mad that they didn't want to follow federal legislation. It was an issue of federal rights versus states' rights, as well as an issue of morality to include anti-slavery and pro-slavery. Okay, so the radical Republicans are going to seek justice. And other aspect means they override vetoes to pass the Civil Rights Act, and as well pass the Freedmen's Bureau. And we'll talk about what those 13 amendments are here in a little bit. State governments set up by Johnson were thrown out, and the South is divided into 5 military districts. Imagine right now that we tried to break away. Would we be able to handle a military controlling everything we do in just Hardin County alone? Just imagine. What if it related to you? Not only was the 13th Amendment passed to abolish slavery, the 14th Amendment and 15th Amendment was also passed. The 14th Amendment is citizenship if born in the U.S. equals equal protection and due process of law. The 15th Amendment is African American male suffrage. No state readmitted till they accepted the 14th Amendment and voting of African Americans' rights. The U.S. Army would be in the South to guarantee protection of the African Americans. So right now you're going to pause, and I'm going to escape. I just realized one of the slides were accidentally hidden. So what you're going to do is you are going to compare and contrast Johnson's plan and Congress's plan. So Congress is that radical Republican. Okay, you're going to do at least 3 differences and 3 differences each, and at least 1 similarity between the two. Okay, you can either use the information I just gave you, or slide number 11, or you can watch this video. This video is optional, and I'll make sure to type optional in there. If you're still struggling with being able to see, right here is your zoom. You can zoom it in. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to go right back to present mode. So remember, this video is optional, and as long as you listen to me describe the 3 plans, you can use that and describe it over here. All right, let's go back to what we're doing. Internet's a little slow, so we'll see. So now, even though it says a review quiz, I want to make sure you understand the big topics that we just talked about, which was the Civil War and Reconstruction. So it might have you fill in the blanks, kind of like you've been doing, okay? Or it might have you place a check mark next to the correct answer or in the box. So we'll go over what that looks like. So the citizens of the South had to take an oath of loyalty, and once 10% of the state had taken the oath, the state could rejoin the Union. Okay, now look, there's a check mark. You're going to use this check mark and double click it over the correct answer. So you're going to drag it and put it over. Yeah, it's Lincoln's plan. It's the most lenient. Okay. Then the next is the radical Republican plan wanted to punish the South, while Lincoln and Johnson wanted to reunite the Union as quickly as possible. Absolutely, that's true. So you're going to click and drag that arrow right here. I really hope you're watching the video because I'm giving you the answers, and I want to make sure you understand what's going on in the Civil War and at the end of Reconstruction. So this is a 5-part plan. Okay, this is what was going on in the radical Republican / Congress's idea of how to reunite the Union, aka reconstruct America back together. Number 1, Southern states had to approve the 13th Amendment. Abolishing slavery totally makes sense. Number 2, Southern states had to nullify seceding from the Union, so meaning they couldn't ever do it again. Number 3, the South could not repay loans from countries that helped them. So Britain helped the Confederate States of America, thinking, hey, if I'm going to back the North or the South, I'm going to back the people who are supplying me with cotton and making me the most money. So when Britain offered that money to them, guess what? The United States just said, you cannot pay them back. That was their choice. We are not going to pay them back for their mistake to lend you that money. Number 4, states had to ratify the 13th and 14th Amendments. So remember, 13th Amendment is slavery, 14th Amendment is citizenship, 15th Amendment is the ability to vote. So think about this. You have to be free before you can become a citizen, and you have to be a citizen before you vote. So free men vote. As long as you know the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, you should be able to figure out what the rest of the amendments mean. And last but not least, there's going to be military control of Reconstruction with the Military Reconstruction Act, where the South is divided into 5 military districts. Obviously, this is way harsher than the one before, and we know Lincoln's was the lenient, so this has to be Congress's. So click and drag that arrow over to that. So now let's talk about the presidential election of 1876. Okay. It's going to go. So it's between Ulysses S. Grant and Horatio Seymour. Okay. And now I want you to make sure you understand the Democrats, okay, those are the people who represented the Confederate States of America. Those are the ones that believed in states' rights, and they were the one that wanted to continue slavery, while Republicans were the ones that wanted to end it. Okay. So now after the Civil War, guess what? There's a whole new set of people that are able to go vote, and they're going to be known as African Americans. So when there's thousands of new people that are able to go vote that can actually influence the election. So these African Americans go out and vote, and guess who they're going to vote for? They're going to vote for the people that totally tried to help them get freed. So yeah, they start voting for the Republicans. They're not going to vote for the Democrats. However, a compromise had to be made in 1876. Okay, there was a dispute between Samuel Tilden, the Democrat, and Rutherford B. Hayes over electoral votes. Okay, Democrats agreed to end the dispute and investigation and allow Hayes to become president in exchange for federal troops leaving the South. The Southern Democratic leaders promised to protect rights of African Americans after troops leave, but they really don't. And that's what we're going to talk about at the end of Reconstruction. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get this loaded. Whoop, go back. Okay, so the end of Reconstruction. Okay, just like we've been doing, that you're going to click and drag these terms to the correct areas. Reconstruction dies out by 1877 with a decrease in support for the issues. So there are going to be limits on what is actually going to be able to happen with African Americans. But there's also going to be agencies that are created, and one of them is the agency designed to assist former slaves throughout the South, known as the Freedmen's Bureau. It provided former slaves with food, education, schools, jobs, etc. Many people from the North became to assist with the Freedmen's Bureau, and they mainly taught in schools. But they're also going to be nicknamed carpetbaggers. Okay, carpetbaggers were Northerners who moved to the South, often seen as frauds. In reality, they came to help the freedmen and poor whites. So carpetbaggers, they packed all of their things, they moved down south and said, I'm going to help African Americans adjust to this new thing. Well, the next thing that you need to know is what a scallywag is. And when we think of scallywag, yeah, we kind of think of pirates and stuff. But there were various groups of Republicans that had different issues they supported. We already talked about carpetbaggers moving to the South to help with Reconstruction, but a scallywag was someone who already lived in the South and were small farm owners who supported Reconstruction. So a lot of the Southerners then did not like the fact that there are military people and the North is trying to come back down and they're trying to control every aspect of what we're doing. The scallywag was like, all right, let's do it. So they were all for it. So make sure that, scallywag goes here, so on and so forth. We're almost done. We're at almost towards the end of the video. And last but not least, Reconstruction dies out by, there might be one more slide. Reconstruction dies out by 1877 with a decrease in support of the issue. There are limits on African Americans post-Reconstruction. Now, we know what the Ku Klux Klan is. We know that is a racist group trying to do anything and everything to stop African Americans from advancing or progressing. And they still exist today. They still have the same motives. But back then, remember the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, they were not happy that they were becoming citizens, and they were not happy that they were able to vote. Okay, they were not happy that they were able to act like a regular member of society. So certain things, such as black codes or Jim Crow laws, okay, or segregation laws passed by local Southern governments to stop them from advancing. And we'll talk about what those are more here in a little bit. And what happens, one of the things that they come up with is this thing called a sharecropper. And it is a system in which landowners give farm workers land, seed, and tools in return for part of the crops they raise. Okay. So that means you are a newly freed slave. Do you really have any skills? Other than, if you were from the South, you might not even know how to read. Okay. And some of your skills could have been from, hey, all I've ever done is work on a plantation. And guess what? I don't have any more. I don't have any money. So are they going to be able to go buy land and have their own farm? Are they going to be able to pack up all their family and move to the North and hope for these better opportunities? No. So guess who they go back to? They go back to the people they used to work for, and they said, here, instead of you trying to figure out a way for yourself. I'll let you rent my land and you can have your own farm. So they were essentially paying their former slave owner or former, plantation owners rent to be able to have a livelihood. And many did move to the north, and we'll talk about what the Great Migration is, which is an influx of African Americans moving to the north for better opportunities. But we're going to save that for another time. Now let's talk about what else they did to enhance African American disenfranchisement. One, they had poll taxes. Okay, they had to pay a tax to vote. Two, they had to take a reading test to vote, known as literacy test. And the last but not least is the grandfather clause. If a grandfather voted before the Civil War, then they could vote. So that means if your grandfather was a slave, then you couldn't vote. Is that fair? Do you think any of those are fair? Imagine if you had to do all that stuff to vote today. Would you even go out and vote? So make sure you click and drag the terms to the correct box. Now, for the last 4 or 5 slides, it's going to be thinking you're going to do the same thing. You're going to click and drag the track over the correct boxes. I have talked a lot. The rest of the remaining slides, I'm going to let you do by yourself. I want to check and make sure you understand what's going on. Some of these questions even refer back to the notes that we did yesterday. Just a reminder, this will be posted on YouTube, so you can use the playback speed to go quicker. You can probably put closed captions on. I'm super excited to see you guys in class, and you all take care. I'm going to try to stop the video.